I've been playing this game for 70 something hours and it will probably take me at least double that to finish it, but I think I've played enough of it to be able to determine if it's worth your investment, so let's get straight into it, starting off with graphics. I'm reviewing this on the PlayStation 4 Pro, and for the most part the game looks great, with an improvement over Odyssey. Though this time with the story taking place for the most part in England, you should expect less of that warm lighting of the Mediterranean and more of a cold lighting you would find in a forest. This is not to say that it doesn't look just as epic as the past two games, but you need to be prepared for the changing scenery, which might come as a shock to some people after spending so much time in warm places. And considering this is early medieval England and not optimistic looking Greece, you might feel some ancient Rome depression. Having said that, the sceneries in Valhalla are living up to what you would expect from an Assassin's Creed game. Say what you want about Ubisoft, but they have some really talented people working on designing these places to offer you a nice view around every river bend and every hill, every turn of the camera offering you a visual that just begs to be explored. However, and I don't know if this is due to Ubisoft maybe not having enough testers with the current state of the world, or if they just got sloppy, but there are issues with the visuals of this game, from textures not fully loading or flickering, to NPCs performing tasks using telekinetic abilities, to holes in the ground where you risk getting stuck. I mean seriously, look at this. Look at this! Note that it's nowhere near as bad as Unity was on release, but it is worse than Odyssey, so prepare to see some bugs. So if this is something you care about, you might want to wait a bit for them to start fixing some of these issues. But what if we combine visual bugs and gameplay bugs? What we get are enemies that kill from a distance without even a sign of animation. One moment you're preparing to shoot your bow, and the next you get hit by the invisible finger of God. This happened to me like 3-4 times. However, the game is a damn cheat, because the same bugs don't work in your favor, in fact quite the opposite. You'd rush a zealot, the equivalent of mercenaries from Odyssey, and start pummeling him on the ground only for him to miraculously heal himself to full health. Unfortunately, I didn't record this because I was too stunned that it happened in the first place, but I assure you it did. And from what I gathered, this happens because in the animation you aren't spotted by the enemy, so him being a type of boss, he just goes on and heals himself just as if you would have left the area. And I had to do all of this again, and if the game saved during that moment of me being not spotted, I could have been in serious trouble. Especially since besides the fact the game once crashed on me, it also corrupted all my save files. Luckily I noticed it and didn't just turn off my console. If that would have happened after I got killed by a boss who just healed all his health and lost hours of progress, I would have had to break something. Sound.
Watch for the counter!
Birna, welcome to the Raven Clan's nest.
Good to be here, Sunbeam.
Voice acting is decent all around, especially the male Eivor, who is excellent, with a few exceptions of people with clearly modern accents. As for the sound effects, they're a little bit muted in my opinion, but overall I think they're again on par with Odyssey, complete with the same audio bug of your footsteps getting cut off and having to crouch or roll just to remind the game that sound should come from your footsteps. When it comes to music, at first I was disappointed. You again get sea shanties on your ship, only this time you unlock songs after each zone you complete, so at first I thought we only got a bunch of lame tunes, but then it gets good. Are they better than the Odyssey ones? Well, you be the judge of that.
Kindly you should speak, and flatter you give.
In my opinion, those used to be a little bit more upbeat, while these ones are brooding and less fun to sing out to, but on the bright side they sort of connect with the story of the previous zone. However, where the music really excels is with the different themes that accompany you on your journey. Top quality and in my opinion better than its predecessors. Moving on to the actual gameplay, Valhalla changes it up a bit. Starting off with the skills, I've seen a lot of people argue against it, saying that most of these are just stat improvers and don't actually change the game. I disagree. If you exclude all these stat improvers and just count the actual skills, they still outnumber the ones from Odyssey. I counted about 41 unique skills from the skill tree alone. Add to that the skills you find from books and you would have, I don't know, a lot, as opposed to the 35 abilities from Odyssey. Also, the ability to respec any point at any time means that you can experiment with the skill tree better than any other skill tree out there. My only complaint about it is that it's covered up by this fog of war, which you can get around by just unlocking the branches, but it's still a bit tedious. In my opinion, it should all be visible so you can better plan out your skills. But aside from that, I think this skill tree is actually a really good improvement over the other games. In fact, I would go so far as saying this system should be implemented by more RPGs in the future. Also, a very important note to be made here is that a lot of people, myself included, complain that you can't properly assassinate some higher level targets in Odyssey. This has been addressed in Valhalla by having one of those skills be a QTE that allows you to instantly kill even the meatiest of targets. I do have a couple of points which boost my assassination damage just in case, but as it stands I think they fixed that issue. The game also offers an option in the settings to bypass all of this and just make assassinations a one-shot kill. And while I'm at it, let's talk about the stealth element itself. It's all pretty much identical with Odyssey. Nothing changed, even the enemies react in pretty much the same way, even grunting when hitting the ground despite the fact they've been dead for like half a minute. What did change is that damn bird, which practically is made useless now because it can't tag enemies or loot. It's just there to give a literal bird-eye view of the place and that's it. Tagging enemies and loot now gets delegated to your Odin's sight, which marks enemies in red, which is so distracting I even tried to play without it, like I did in other games, but now since I can't mark enemies with the damn bird, I'm practically defenseless. So I had to turn it on. Why? Why am I forced to see everyone in red like this? Who thought gimping the bird like this would be a good thing, when all you have left is this red blob option? And for anyone out there saying you can put markers on enemies, yes I know, but those are map markers and they are limited and just as distracting. Now going back to the RPG elements, this game follows the path set by Odyssey, offering some choices here and there, but doesn't dive too deep into it. At least not yet. I'm sure I will find some more options in the quests that follow, but I would be surprised if it goes further than what we got in Odyssey and its sort of multiple endings. However, what Valhalla really does differently than its predecessors is the unique approach to quests. You basically only have the main story as actual quests, with a few exceptions, with the side quests being incorporated in the main quest. At first I was disappointed when I heard this, because I often like doing the side quests more than the actual main story. However, fret not. The main story is so big and with a lot of branches that you won't feel cheated out of not having side quests. And with the addition of world events, these blue stars, yes, if you didn't know, those are meant to be stars, because the Vikings used the stars to navigate. We get yellow stars for gear and materials to upgrade your gear and settlement, white for puzzles or bosses or, I don't know, places of evil, and finally blue stars for world events. A sort of teeny tiny mini quest which are always fun to do, since it's always something interesting, like a fox setting fire to a house, a guy with an axe stuck in his head, and look, I also got this cat from one of these mini quests. All in all, the way they approach quests and activities in this game is really good, surpassing in my opinion the traditional main quest side quest we had in Odyssey. Where they really drop the ball is gear. First of all, it's way too rare, and it doesn't synergize in a meaningful way with the talents you get. But that's not even the worst bit about the gear, at least in my opinion. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is meant to take place during the Viking incursions in England, yet the gear we get is absolutely historically inaccurate, more than any other Assassin's Creed game out there, which in my opinion sabotages the role-playing aspect of this game in a big way. I have yet to find an accurate looking piece of gear after hours of searching. The only historically accurate thing on me is my cloak. You don't even get a Viking one-handed sword. Hell, you don't get a one-handed sword. This is insane! If you know anything about the early medieval period, you know that one-handed swords were prevalent and that two-handed swords were practically non-existing. Yet in this game we get the opposite. They even messed up the shields that you can equip. There is only one shield that actually follows the look. All the others have this weird dome-like shape which is inaccurate as hell. How did they mess up the gear this badly? Meanwhile, I'm walking around my settlement and I see all these accurate shields on the ground, but I'm stuck with this fantasy shield. Even the heavy kite shields don't look like how they're supposed to, but there are countless kite shields around that look historically accurate. This kills the immersion for me and it forces me to wear weaker gear in an attempt to not stick out like some 21st century LARPer. I did notice a chainmail armor on one of those NPCs you can hire for your crew created by other players, so at least I'll get to wear that. But I don't understand what happened. Compare this to Odyssey, where I was able to equip Alexios in historically accurate armor and weapons. No shield though. Why would you have a shield in the time period of the hoplites? This is pure insanity! Now we get shields and it almost makes me wish we didn't. And speaking of which, Ubisoft is always prating on about having a diverse team of people, blah blah blah, but when it comes to being historically accurate and actually paying respect to the culture and time period they are trying to represent, well, they simply don't care. These people are supposed to be Danes, but just look at them. Do they actually look at all Scandinavian to you? Ubisoft basically replaced their race with another and have the nerve to say they promote representation. I spammed 1 hour the button to randomize my companion in an attempt to get one that actually looks like a Viking. I swear, 1 hour. I got everything from Asian to Native American to Italian, but somehow the color blonde was nowhere to be seen. 1 hour. If that's not on purpose, I don't know what is. And Ubisoft should be ashamed of their hypocrisy in hiding the race around which the story and history takes place. You are going to be hard pressed to find Scandinavian looking people in this Viking game, so just go right ahead and pretend it's Skyrim, because you're not gonna get anything historically accurate in this game. Story. Now I'll avoid spoilers as much as possible since I do believe this story is worthy of being discovered firsthand. It offers a couple of nice little twists and turns to keep you engaged, maybe even more than Odyssey, and definitely more than Origins and its boring story. However, going back to my previous complaint, these characters don't act like people from that time period, and it again feels like Skyrim. And this affects the storytelling potential, with a lot of characters acting like they're 21st century hipsters. With a few exceptions, of course. The main character Eivor is actually really good, and since I'm playing with the male version, the guy is almost a one-to-one copy of Ragnar from the Viking TV series. The voice actor does a great job, and in my opinion the male Eivor is one of the best Assassin's Creed protagonists, at the very least better than Alexios, Cassandra or Bayek. And here's a tip for any future players, the game offers you the ability to let the game decide when to change from male to female. I would recommend against it. No, wait, hear me out. Connecting with the character you're playing as is very important in any game, and if you constantly change characters willy-nilly, then you don't get to do that, and I've heard this happening to a lot of people who went with that option. So whether you pick the female Eivor or the male one, I would recommend sticking with that decision. Going back to the character itself, Eivor and a few others managed to act like actual Vikings, which is great, but most of the secondary characters are a bunch of wusses that would get made into drinking utensils with the first occasion.
The rightful king of East Anglia has spared your life today, and so it will be.
Compassion is a virtue suited for anyone, Eivor, including you.
Compassionate my Danish balls, I'm a cold-hearted, calculated psychopath. If we spare him now, we can make an example of him later. Killing him now would be a waste of a perfectly good sippy cup.
Sigurd, what about these prisoners?
We've got what we need. Let them go.
How many men does it take to deliver a message?
But this is what happens when the narrative vision of the writers gets overturned by modern sensibilities. I won't even mention the debacle that happened 2 weeks ago. If you want to know more about that, check out my previous video about this game. When it comes to rating this game, I was tempted to give it a 7.5 at first, but I think I will go ahead and raise it to an 8, because despite its flaws, it manages to make me want to see more of its lands and story. It keeps me entertained, and it does that consistently and for a long time. Which for me is important. I want to feel like I'm getting my money's worth, and although I haven't finished it yet, my estimation would be that I spent 30 cents on the hour, which for me is a pretty good investment. So if you manage to get past the inaccuracies and the issues I've already mentioned, and if you liked Odyssey and are prepared for the scenery change, then this game might be for you. Anyways, thank you for watching, please consider subscribing and sharing your thoughts down below, and as always, have a nice day.